Okay. All right. Turn it over to Susan.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy spring, and thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm very excited to see so many friends and family and to meet new people. I'm going to talk tonight about my work and some of how I started in the book field. And I'd like to start with talking about my experience at the College of Ceramics at Alfred, where I went to school as an undergraduate and had amazing teachers there who were incredibly inspiring. I took sculpture. I went for ceramics originally because I was so much into clay and pottery, and in high school made a lot of clay work. And then went to the State University of New York at Oswego and worked with several potters there, including Richard Zakin, and just so many influences in my life. And I feel indebted to my teachers, present and past. I'm going to pull up my slide talk and share my screen. And there's that. And let's see. Uh, Now I just need to get my Zoom. There we go. So one of the most wonderful teachers I had at Alfred was John Cheney Wood. He taught me how to make my first book. I made sketchbooks and sculptural books at Alfred, and was introduced also to a whole community of people interested in the book arts in Rochester, New York, including Scott McCarney, Keith Smith, Ed Reed, and Joan and Nathan Lyons in Visual Studies Workshop. So I just feel like it was such a wonderful gift to be a student of John Wood, see his book works and other kinds of work, his dedication to the art forms that he employed, and just kind of living a life of art. And that was really inspiring to me. So this is I'm keep getting, now I have the screen here. This meeting is being recorded. Is everyone seeing that? Or are you seeing just my slideshow?
All we see is your slideshow.
Okay, good, because I have some bar across my screen here. So John made sketchbooks. He made some small edition books. He was a photographer, a watercolorist, collagist. He was a poet, and just, worked in so many different mediums and was influential to all the students at Alfred. So this is a page, 2 pages, a double spread in one of his sketchbooks. It's also the end sheet in a book that was published about his work called On the Edge of Clear Meaning. And I'm going to reduce this or just get rid of it. So this is an image of John Cheney Wood on the Edge of Clear Meaning. His website is here, johncheneywood.com. Has a lot of information about his work. And he did work in nature on the land as well. This is from the early 1980s. And these are some other pages from his sketchbook. He was really interested in bookmaking, all different kinds of structures. He would be drawing different book forms, beautiful drawings. And he invented several book structures as well. And I think a lot of people, a lot of artists are making books that he invented, but they don't know that he was actually the source of that. Here's another one of his environmental pieces, drawing those books into the sand. He was a photographer and did alternate processes as well as straight photography. And this is a watercolor of his. And his sketchbooks are just filled with these incredible drawings, collages, watercolors, and words. And on the website, there's a quote that says, John Wood's sketchbooks are filled with drawings, photographs, watercolors, collages, and words, reflecting a lifetime of art making, teaching, and inquiry. This is a picture of me making one of my first books. I learned how to fold a signature from a large sheet of paper. So these are photogram images on the pages, and then taking a large sheet of paper, folding, slicing, folding, slicing, and learning how to make the sections of a book. And I just was fascinated right away by all the different ways that you could take that folded signature and rearrange it and make different shapes. So this is like 1976 or so. Another one, I was in sculpture with Professor William Perry, another one of wonderful professor and great influences at Alfred, making sculpture, cast wax pieces. And this was one of my earliest books. I made a plaster mold, poured wax into it, and then while the wax was wet, liquid, I embedded these canvas pages into it. And my thinking was to make a book that was an interesting shape so that if someone was reading poetry, for example, that they had an object that was as interesting as what their words were. And these are some of my early sketchbooks, hand-bound books with closing boxes folding over, different kinds of closures on them, and just full of different colors. A lot of times when I made these sketchbooks, they're visual diaries, so I would do a page in them every single day for a month, or several pages every day, working in them in a really concentrated way. And there's some autobiographical elements to them. So these are some things that I looked at early on. This is some engravings by Martin Engelbrecht from the 16th century. This particular thing is from around 1730. Engelbrecht was an engraver and publisher famous for some of his garden dioramas and peep shows and optical toys. And he also did these amazing portraits of people wearing the things of their trade. So this one is a vendor of images. And I mean, what could be more fun and incredible than that? This vendor just wearing all these papers that he's selling, including, parts of his hat and what he's holding and things that become his clothing. And then this one is the bookbinder with the instruments of his professions. And I've always loved this image from very early on, because here's the bookbinder and he's wearing a book and he's got this apron with all the tools and then other kinds of tools from the profession. And on the left, I'm not sure the origin of that image, but it is a celebratory image of wearing paper as a costume. And on the right is a Sumatran soothsayer in prayer. And the books there are accordion books that are made out of bark. And the language that's written there is called Toba Batak. And I looked a lot at paintings, medieval paintings and images of books through history. And this is one that is in the collection at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It's from the 15th century, Netherlandish painting. And it uses the book and the heart book as a metaphor for love. So I loved seeing the shapes, the different kinds of shapes that books took. And of course, paintings were always in these days of the wealthy. And this type of book was also something that symbolized wealth, that the person had wealth. And this, I have a little postcard of this, and I wanted to include it because it's by Peter Bruegel, and from the Flemish Renaissance. And it's a detail of a painting called Children's Games. And in this painting, it's an amazing painting. I didn't put the full image in, but it's views of children playing games, over 90 different games. And I just loved this little section of the kids upside down and the book bag and the playfulness of this. The painting is in the Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna. And the full image is really great too, but I just loved this little section. And when I graduated from Alfred, I moved to New York and just started pursuing my art career. I started my own organization called Book Gatherings. I studied bookbinding with Laura Young in New York and Hetty Kyle, and at the Center for Book Arts, just kind of trying to take in as much as I could about the book field. And I also was fortunate to get a position with the CETA Artist Program in New York. So I met many different artists in different fields, and just, went on my way in New York City. So this was a little graphic from a children's reader. And the question was, what are these boys and girls doing? And in every one of the little frames, I drew some kind of a book experience, and people wearing or kicking or dropping or holding books in different ways, tearing. So this was part of a brochure for an exhibit that I curated called The Naked Book. And that was a collaboration between the Center for Book Arts and the CETA Artist Program. So, and this is some portfolios I made as an artist in the CETA program, and a collaboration with a dancer, Stormy Brandenburger. So I had made these portfolios for a project with the CETA program. I made them at the Center for Book Arts on Bleecker and Bowery in those days. And we just took them outside and started doing some movement pieces with them before they were given to various officials in the CETA program and sponsors as and holding a whole series of photographs. It was a photographic portfolio. And at the time also, I started making these complex folding structures. I learned a lot about hinging, folding materials. And I made this piece called, let's see, it was Expanded Stacks Compressed. So the whole thing folded down into a pretty compact, dense, heavy piece, and then it opened out. It was a modular unit that was stacking, and so it could stack like 5 or 6 feet high. And I think about it as something very interior on the image on the left, and I'm inside it and kind of hiding behind it. But then also it had a very outward and open feel to it too. So the image on the right, I'm on the rooftop of my little apartment building in Brooklyn, New York. And then I love collaborating. And this is a dear friend, Julie Siegel Bennett. And as I mentioned, I learned so much at Center for Book Arts, and I learned this great fold from Hetty Kyle. And I showed it to Julie, and she made this incredible piece of flowing paper. And then we worked back and forth on creating performances with it. And it's a piece that I've made many, many versions of over the years. But the kind of seed of this was my collaboration with Julie, and just so grateful for that. And Julie and we also made our costumes. We took T-shirts and we made different kinds of ribs and layers that had the same feeling as the piece. So these are some other paper slinkies that I've made over the years, using different colors, punches, different kinds of materials, including fabrics and a variety of different weight papers. And I was also interested in exaggerating different things about the book. So these I call chunk books, and they're from the early 1980s as well. And there's a very, very solid bound part of the book, and then a little space to hinge some papers in there or add panels. And so they have kind of a fluttery feel of the part that moves, and then that more heavy kind of base. But these are small pieces. The piece on the left is kind of the size of a men's razor. And just continuing with that idea of exaggerating the bound part of a book, how it sits, what the base is like, how it balances, and then these more fluid pages at the top. And I started thinking more about the movement of the book and performance. This is a stilted screen from 1984. Lots of acrylic painting, things that fold down into very compact and then fold up into something that could be a room divider or a set. And then in 1985, I was invited to go to London to show some of my work at Bookworks Gallery in London. And I wanted to be really compact in how I, what I took with me. So I made this 13-inch cube, and I wanted it to have elements of all the different ideas I'd been working on at the time. So it had folding screens and slinky parts and things that kept unfolding from the 13-inch cube to, I don't know, maybe 15 by 20 out on the floor and 5 feet high. So it would keep unrolling, and the different panels had parts that then again unfolded and one could build structure with. So the performance would be the unfolding of the book kind of in a more slow movement, and then the refolding in a more rapid, at a more rapid pace. And another part of that I was very interested in was the sound, what it sounds like to drop the book, what it sounded like, the fluttering of that paper. So the closing and opening and all the sounds that came with it. And I did some other collaborations with an actress, Nancy Smithner on the left, Stormy Brandenburger with the blue shirt on, Cooper Moore, a wonderful musician. And I started making these percussion instruments out of different kinds of cardboard. So here we are kind of making like a faux rock band. So we would just create these rhythms with the pieces and really explore the sounds that paper and boards and books can make in a more rhythmic way. And of course, Cooper Moore, he was the best at making the rhythms. These are just some more pieces. Our collaboration, we met for a year. I had gotten a grant from New York State Council on the Arts to create a performance, and worked with Stormy, Nancy, and Cooper Moore for a year to create this performance called Unfolded World. And there includes some paper costumes, like Stormy's there in the front, and I made these vests and different things, laminated layers of paper and fabric. And fold out pocketbooks and just all kinds of things that just kept appearing and folding out from these very dense closed boxes. So the next slide, I'm going to show a very short video. It's about 1.5 minutes, and it's from 1992, an exhibit from the Center for Book Arts.
When you open up one of Susan Scher's books, currently on exhibit at the Center for Book Arts, you'll find yourself transformed into a display of movement, music, and magic.
Hi, I'm Susan Scher, and this is an exhibit of my artwork entitled Books, Props, and Collages. The work involves the use of bookbinding techniques to create sculpture, which combines painting and movement, sound, and transformation. Many of the objects in the exhibit have heavily collaged surfaces and are objects that can be used in performance by dancers and actors.
Sorry about that. Oh. Sorry, I was concerned about the sound on that, and now I'm not sure how to get rid of this thing here. Celine, can you help me a little there?
It looks fine from our end.
You're not seeing a big screen thing?
We see two pictures of you with some big installation. You look like you're wearing one of them.
Okay.
Nothing
So I
else.
can't get rid of, I have a little screen up here and I can't get rid of it, so I can't really see what I'm doing. But,
Oh.
and could you hear the sound okay on that video
Yes.
as well? Okay. All right, well, I don't know how to get rid of my thing here, so I guess I'll just try to keep going. So, this on the left here is a hand-foot puppet, and that's been part of a performance. You could see it in that video. And then on the right is a piece that I call Corner Divide. I'm still trying to get rid of this screen that I can't see. And see, I can't see what I'm looking at here. So
Susan, just unshare and then share again.
unshare and share again.
Share your screen.
Yeah, stop. That's a good suggestion. Stop sharing and then share again.
Okay.
That's weird. That didn't happen yesterday when we were working on this, so
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay. Now I can get rid of it. Okay.
Thank you,
Great.
whoever said that.
Yes, I think that was Sarah. I
True.
think- yeah, let's go back to that. Okay, thank you, Sarah. It takes a village. And back to slideshow. Okay, so that's good. At least now I can see what I'm doing. So this piece was called Box for a Brighter Side. I was thinking about it as a traveling piece, a suitcase that opens out that you kind of scuttle around the airport with, and then it opens up, and very similar to the box for the unfoldings box, the cube, but kind of the next variation on it. So it starts out as a closed box, and covers open, screens pop up, or I manipulate them to come up. And then things keep unrolling, unfolding. I learned a lot about pop-ups from Carol Barton at the time, and incorporated some of those ideas into this piece. So things keep unfolding, unfolding. And there's another screen that folds up. that's in the background now. And then these spike costumes. So there's that kind of spike theme of things that are kind of growing out of the ground, and then also more animal-like, where the spikes are worn. And that's kind of a costume with the masks that are part of this, and we do some choreography with it. So again, I worked with Stormy Brandenburger, and then later when I moved to Alaska, I worked with another woman here, and really enjoyed doing this performance. Another part of the performance were these hand spikes, and we created a lot of rhythms with them. So I have about 20 or more of these hand spikes that get used in the performance. These are vellum masks, similar to the ones that were in that spike costume. And another performance, this was one of the first performance pieces I created when I moved to Alaska. It's from 1999. It's called Carrots Anyone. And it's like a cigarette girl costume where you wear it and things fold out, but instead of selling cigarettes, it becomes a dance that fold out legs and different compartments and a box of carrots. And then so each carrot is a little book, little styrofoam carrots, and I sold them in the performances, and they have information on them about food nutrition and feeling good, looking good, and all the things that the food advertising industry entices us to buy their product. I also, in New York, worked with Richard Lewis from the Touchstone Center for Children. We collaborated on several performances. Richard is an educator, a poet, and worked with a lot of artists in the schools and all over New York in the 5 boroughs, and always thinking about play and the sense of wonder and bringing out the most beautiful words from the children he worked with. So we did this as a collaboration, and I created this box from the Sleep of Waters, and it has all these compartments. Inside each compartment is another kind of puppet-like piece that would be performed as part of our work together. And there is a video, I think, on Richard's website called From the Sleep of Waters. And these are just some of the fish characters that come out of the box. Made all different kinds of accordion books, different hinging, fabrics, beads, plastics. I worked a lot with plastics. And then since I've been in Alaska, I've done some teaching and had this great opportunity to work with the Nature Conservancy at Salmon Camp on Lake Allegnagick. Lake Allegnagick is outside of Dillingham, Alaska. It's a really big fishing community. Lake Allegnagick is 26 miles long by 16 miles wide. It's connected to Dillingham by a road only in the southern part of it, and the rest you have to fly in or boat. So as an instructor in Salmon Camp, one of 3 instructors, this was how I got to my workshop, on a float plane. And then we worked with the kids. We did fish printing, goyu, well, I think it's pronounced jiu-taku, like a Japanese technique of printing the fish. So all the kids learned that. And then we made these foam stamp impressions with different kinds of things that had to do with fishing, hooks and nets and other things that were in the natural environment there. And each of the kids made a print that they shared with the other kids. And we also made some little books. So, and that's one of the kids, he wanted to do his braces, so. And that's, you know, some of the group, there were 2 different groups of kids. So that's one of the groups of kids and their books. And then these are some of my kind of little codex books, needle books. I call them the Spilka series. So they're handmade felt, mylar, paper, needles and thread, little collections of words and images and needles. Learning handmade felting was just wonderful here. I feel like Alaska opened up different things for me, which included felting and fabric dyeing and beading. And this was a piece that I call Izzy. And it reminds me a bit of my father. It's felted limbs and a buoy as a torso with aluminum screw posts and paper and like a little puppet. And some more felting came into different pieces. This is called Bee the Queen Bee. It's a box that's inside a box, inside a box. And the outer box is multi-chambered and it has these little bees that have paper wings and they come out of that little honeycomb chamber. And then the most interior box is this, which is a Jacob's Ladder box. I also learned how to work with hog gut from some artists here. And it's similar to some of the intestinal materials that Indigenous Alaskans use to create parkas and other kinds of garments and containers. So that was a brush that I made out of hog gut and then sewed paper that says she washed her brushes in a sink full of dishes. These are Coptic bindings with clay covers. I made these as a part of the State of Alaska Governor's Arts Awards. Alaska used to give a Governor's Arts Award to an outstanding artist, and in other different fields as well, humanities, and they gave out awards and they would always commission those awards from other artists. So these were given as Governor's Arts Awards to the recipients. And this piece is called Stack, and it's hinged panels, playing a lot with the color and how things open, and trying different movements with the piece. It's a very lightweight piece, even though it looks very dense. And so it was just another experiment with performing with the book. This is called The Bull Collapses Under Its Own Weight. And my husband, Paul Stang, was very interested in stock market goings on and printed out all these pages that had to do with the stock market. And I would find them all over the house and just eventually started sewing them together into this big stack. And the bottom is a wooden cube-like structure, well, not quite a cube, rectangle. And it has kind of a ticker tape inset of papers where those grooves are. And this piece is Fog and Flame. It was something I started in New York in the early 80s and then worked on again here in Alaska, painting it and painting both sides. And the cardboards are connected in a way that one would connect board if you were making a cord binding. So it's kind of punching a hole, pushing the linen threads through, splaying out the ends, and just making all those connections, which I always loved that understructure of the book. And this is called Coiled Serpent. And it's a series, I work large on panels doing painting. This one has a lot of wax resist and acrylic paint. And I would work on a big panel, cut it into pieces, shape those pieces, and then These are all wired together. And they have some supports with bamboo skewers as well. So very structured. And then when it opens out, that's the shape that it makes. This is somewhat of the same technique. It's called spray skirt. Again, taking a larger painting, cutting it into sections, making shapes, wiring it back together. And then this addition of the skirt are very thin dowels with some weights on the end. So this one has a lot of movement. As you walk by it, the air really moves around those lightweight dowels. And this is zip off fence. It's about 20 some panels that are connected by 36-inch long zippers. And each panel has numerous layers, words about measuring and patterns, and lots of punch outs as well. And then these were made around 2006. I had a solo show at the Anchorage Museum, and this piece was in it, and it was called Headbanded Strips. And I made each one of those strips, handmade paper strips, and did this headbanding along the entire top edge. And they're just, each one is different kinds of prints, lots and lots of sewing, detail, kind of embroidery, and insets. And this one highlights me and my brothers in our baseball uniforms back when we were just children. We each had baseball uniforms. A lot of those photos became faded and worn, and I incorporated that into the piece. It's got layers of different kinds of medium, so it's embedded in medium, which gives it the stability to sew it. And this series is called the Horizon series. It's consists of about 6 different books with using the same technique, kind of a French link stitch, and thinking about the spine as the painting in the book, in a way similar to four-edge painting, which is when you splay open the open edge, that foredge of the book. It was a tradition in fancy books to create a painting on that foredge. So I kept thinking about that, the foredge painting, and thinking about spine edge painting. And the paintings are created by the coloring of the pages, which are acrylic painted with wax resist, with crayon resist. And then here's another video. And so I'm going to have confidence that this one's going to play well. And this is a show that I had in 2018 at a gallery here in Anchorage called the International Gallery. And the show is Informal Nature.
The video is frozen.
Oh. The 2 of them are playing.
It's going now.
This is a detail. I'm sorry about the sound in that. I guess I had clicked on it twice, so it was kind of overlapping sound. But thank you, Sarah, again for helping solve some problems. This is a detail of the piece that was the lead piece on that, and it's called Sleeping Ladies. Sleeping Ladies is a mountain here that you can see from the shores of Anchorage. It's Mount Susitna, and it looks like a reclining lady. So I was just playing on that idea of sleeping ladies. And so this crocheted portion of the book indicates where those arms come out. There are 8 kind of puppet arms that are in these hidden pockets in this book. And then this piece is called Trellis Wardrobe. And it's, to me, it kind of felt like a closet that you could walk into, and it had lots of fabric. It included some tablecloths that were my mother's that had stains on them. So I had painted them and stiffened them and used them as part of this piece, which is really upholstered. So the sections of the shoulders are upholstered, and the whole blue part of that piece is upholstered. And it uses the number 3 kind of as an anthropomorphic shape. These are some more pieces kind of in that 3 series, but thinking about the negative 3 shape as well as the positive 3 shape. So this is all the same piece in different positions, and it's called Insiders. And it's also puppet-like and insect-like. And then one of the wonderful opportunities I've had here in Alaska is to work on some public art. And this, I was commissioned to make this piece for the Providence Cancer Center in Anchorage. It was being built newly, and they had sponsors that were the initial funders of the Cancer Center. So this is a 30-foot wall. And I made, back to my ceramic background, I made a ceramic tile mural. It's about 42 inches in diameter. And then these wooden slats are etched, laser etched with the donor names. I also made these border tiles, baseboard tiles, and crown tiles. So hundreds of different tiles I made for this piece. And that was in, I think, 2004. There's some detail of the ceramic work. And then just in April of last year, a moose wandered into the Cancer Center. I guess the doors are kind of motion center doors, sensor doors. And this moose just wandered in, attracted by the greenery, and just posed in front of the donor wall. So I was very thrilled that a moose came to visit my artwork. And another public art piece I was involved with is called Reclaiming Asphalt. It's part of Cook Inlet Housing Corporation. And I had this great opportunity to work with this artist, Chad Taylor of Intrinsic Landscapes, and Sarah Lindsay, who is a graphic designer. And Chad drew out the neighborhood streets. This part in green is the streets of Spenard and how they're laid out. And then he designed the shape of these different panels. And he wanted me to create the imagery for the mural. So this is a layout that Sarah put together. And I cut all the shapes for these different figures: the plane, the windmill, the train, an old car. Spenard is a notorious neighborhood in Alaska for a kind of seedy history. It had the train going through it. It was the red light district of Anchorage. And it also had a post office. So those are some of the shapes that I cut out that became part of the mural. And here's Chad and his crew installing these panels. And we got them printed on ACM board, which is aluminum amalgam. So 2 panels, thin panels of aluminum with a polyethylene core. And that was great. It's a sign material. And it was needed to hold up to not only the weather, but Chad had the idea of making this into a living wall and having plantings in it. So that's what the final piece looked like. So all my panels that were laid out on that paper printout became these separate panels printed and then installed onto that mesh, which was a great structure for installing it easily. And then Chad, as a landscape designer, planted all these different with herbs and flowers and other greenery into the mural. So, and I like to call it Bernard Hub of the Universe. And it still is a very active neighborhood. There's a lot of energy going into revitalizing the neighborhood and creating community. I worked on another piece that was part of a fashion show. And this is a feather duster jester. And the model here is Stephanie Wanchala, a wonderful dancer. And she's wearing a little backpack, and it's called Palimpsest Dustpan. And she's wearing a crown, a doing done crown. So that was my runway outfit. And then I have another video where I actually created a different choreography for the puppet and did a performance in a show in 2019 in a lovely gallery here called Bivy. Then came COVID, and I started working at home more. We have a garden and lots of equipment, and this was one of our defunct houses. So I painted it and then sewed on these many little spigots. And that's what the piece on the left is, this home and garden piece, and that's what it looks like installed on a wall. And I added these kind of blue paper, painted paper threads into each spigot. And I've done a series of these hose and spigot pieces. Then some other kind of book, like sequential book pieces, thinking about shapes and scissors, things moving up and down and around at the same time. This is called snippets. Just an addition of 2 right now. And then I've been taking lots of classes with my good friend Paula Beardell Krieg and learning Zhenjin Bao, different kinds of folding of boxes and layering of boxes for like a thread book, a needle thread book from China, a traditional Chinese craft. And so I've been teaching with Paula the Zhenjian Bao and working on learning all these different ways of layering, opening boxes, opening, and lots of surprise elements of things behind things and opening inside and beyond. And this is another Zhenjian Bao piece, and it's kind of my album of all the things that I've taught with Paula to various students on Zoom. And it just has so many things, so many possibilities, the layers. You can incorporate accordion books, different types of boxes, sizes of boxes, on how all the sizes relate and rely on each other. And this is a bulletin board that I kept during our teaching, and it's our 12th session of 12. And I put all the elements of everything we learned in the class on that bulletin board, and just so many facets. And then on the chair here are just some of the little bundles that we made during the Zhenjian Bao. Just a wonderful process, and so grateful to learn this and to be able to teach it with Paula. Just a few more pieces here. This is box pleats. Again, I've been studying different kinds of things with Paula, mathematical things, different kinds of pleating. So these are a few pieces I made in one of as an outcome of one of her classes. Learning also different ways of releasing edges in paper, like pop-ups, but in a different way. And then Paula recently taught this amazing series of 10 sessions on Seminole patchwork. And I really loved the detail of that, and creating strips and then arranging and rearranging them. So these are pieces influenced by the Seminole patchwork, and they're just paper collages. And then the last thing I want to show is one last video. It's a collaboration with this amazing woman, S. Hollis Mickey. And we did a performance again at the Bivy Gallery space together. And this is another like minute video, and it's the last of my things. There we go. So I am going to stop share. Yeah.
All right, that was amazing. You started off the presentation by saying that you wanted to make the first book, you wanted to make a sculptural book that was interesting so that the object being held was as interesting a shape to hold as the words that you were being read. And I feel like that just, like, you took that notion and exploded it into your whole genre of using everything around you to make art and involve yourself from head to toe with it. It was just fascinating. So thank you so much. I'll open this. I have a few questions, and I'll let anybody else who has a question pop in. But I'm going to go first since I'm already talking. I was curious on specifically. Remember the zip off fence? There
Yes.
was one that I was like, oh, look at that. I never thought of using zippers in a book. And I was wondering, could you rearrange the panels, or were the zippers all joined so that all you could do is open and close the zipper? Was it like an interchangeable zipper?
Ideally they would be interchangeable, but zippers are so fussy.
Yes.
And so they really kind of sit as zipper hinges more than rearranging them. Ideally, it would be great to unzip and zip them, but those zippers were not newfangled easy zippers. So I was lucky that I got them to just zip where they belonged.
To even close.
And to line up, because the bases had to really also line up so that it laid evenly and flat on the floor. So if I started interchanging the zippers, I might run into some problems with the things, kind of floating where they shouldn't be floating.
I like that idea though, because there's something that joins two things together, like we're always trying to do with pages in a book. And you're like, oh, well, zippers join two things together. I can make a book with that. So I felt very inspired by all the different materials that you incorporated into your work, and listening to the sounds of the book, and how it moves as it flows. With your Slinky books was really, really cool. And I like the part about even the moose enjoyed your artwork. I thought only in Alaska would a moose come in and enjoy your work. That was
That is
pretty
true,
amazing photo.
And you could imagine my surprise, because that was on the front page of the paper on that day, and I hadn't heard about the moose before, and there it was with my installation in the background. So that was pretty exciting.
That kind of ties in with, so you started in ceramic, and that piece was ceramic. How
Yes.
did you make the switch from mostly ceramics, which I assume was sculptural pieces, into more paper-based pieces and bookworks?
Well, I think just from the beginning, from being at Alfred and being exposed to more of a foundation type education where you experimented with different materials. So I thought I was going to Alfred for ceramics, but then they didn't let undergraduates just take ceramics. You had to take other things.
Oh.
So I took welded steel, made a lot of welded steel sculpture, and was introduced to the book and paper arts with John Wood.
Oh, so it was through your exposure there, and you're like, ooh, this talks to me.
Yeah, well, and I had been working on sculptural pieces that were made up of layers. I would use metal hinges, and I would have like a screen door, and then a window shade, and then that you'd lift up the window shade and there'd be something behind it. So the idea of making things in book form, it felt like something that I was already doing, but I didn't really know it.
Very cool, very cool. Is there, now I've kind of hogged the mic here. Has anybody got any questions for Susan? You gotta just like yell out.
I see a question in the chat from PSBA, and it's like, what do I use for hinge material, for instance,
there we go.
in the box I took to England? And that was mostly book cloth, heavy kinds of buckram book cloths, but I would reinforce them with other layers, perhaps a Japanese tissue or something else, a thin linen or something to make it stronger, because those pieces got so much action. They went through rehearsal after rehearsal and then performance after performance. And I was always working on either repairing them or kind of re-enhancing, refurbishing them a little bit, repainting certain parts, because you never knew what kind of floor you'd be on. And I would be a mad floor sweeper and mopper before any time I would do a performance. I would go in and just spend all this time cleaning to make sure that there wasn't too much grit and on the floor, and to try to preserve my pieces.
Now, Carol asks if you start with sketches of your work or a sketchbook for your work.
Sometimes, but then often things just kind of grow out of the process of building. So especially with the piece like that cube piece, I had an idea of how I wanted it to open in somewhat of a spiral, but as I worked on it, it kind of took on a life of its own. And I was started on the very interior with that stack, that tower that is in the middle, and then built around it, and then just kept building around it and around it and around it and rolling, and other kinds of structures, folding in. But technically, a real challenge to fit everything into that small space, and that it actually opens out and folds back up.
And opens out and stacks up too, we were showing in the pictures, so it wasn't
Yeah.
just a piece of paper that laid on the floor.
No, there was a lot of building that went on within the performance of the different structures.
Jenna Schnur asked, have the challenges of getting materials in Alaska driven any of your work, or have there been any techniques that grew out of not being able to find something you need?
Oh, well, Jenna's in Alaska. And well, I think in the beginning that was true, that I thought, okay, I'm just going to be using cardboard boxes, and how do I get materials here? But I feel like things are accessible. They're just really expensive to get here. But also, I had the opportunity to bring a lot of things with me. So when I moved here, I brought a lot of paper and bookboard and other materials from New York. And so I still have quite a stash of paper. Some of that I collected with my friend Paula in New York, and was lucky enough to be able to bring some of it and my equipment up here to Alaska. So, and have things changed? Well, yeah, I mean, I think I learned all those new things, the felting and the gut work and beadwork and other ways of making other art forms. So I felt like all those things that I learned, I was able to incorporate somehow into my thinking.
Kitty Galanis asked, and I was curious about this as well, the number 3 that you had on that exhibit, how you came to that being, you were looking at both negative space and positive space, and you said you felt like it was, what was I can't remember the word you said, it was
Anthropomorphic.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Well,
how did that come about?
Well, that came about because my stepson, Paul's son, gave me that 3, and it was a beautiful 3. I think it had been a number on a building. It was a large 3, like a 12 by 12 inch 3. And I had it for years, and I wasn't sure about what I was going to do with it, if anything. And then just one day I started looking at that 3 shape in a different way, and did a whole series of pieces thinking about that 3. And also because of the symmetry of it, it really did feel like a face or a body, or, it had that mask-like quality to it. So I just took off with that for a whole series of pieces.
I noticed in those series that you did more with kind of traditional pop-ups and magnets, and I didn't notice much of that in other pieces. More, you do more pop-up stuff, but that really had some quite almost traditional looking pop-ups. And then the magnets, I didn't see anywhere else. You were playing with the noises of the magnets, which I thought was really interesting. Was that just
Oh.
an inspiration for that series, or?
I've been working with magnets for a long time, but I used a lot of them in that series, and I'm not sure why, other than that I had them, and then they do make a great sound. And they, you know, I learned a lot about them because not every magnet held enough, or some of them held too much, and so yeah. But it helped me create pieces that were really flexible and could store more easily because things attached and detached.
Scott Bennett said, your work is so beautifully and intentionally crafted. Please talk about the element of play in relationship to the craftsmanship.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's the relationship of play. I feel like my whole approach to work has to do with play, but I think some of that can get in the way of craftsmanship because there's so many things that are so exacting in the book processes. So in some ways, I think they fight each other. I think that being really playful to me is like tearing paper and throwing it around the room. But crafting some of these things is much more focused, um, and still can be playful in the way that you approach it. But you really have to be focused on technique as well as kind of your intuition and improvisation. So sometimes they butt heads, but hopefully, you know, both of the elements kind of come through in the end of kind of the technical. I'm really interested in things being technically good, you know, strong and well constructed, and not blue spots everywhere and that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that, you know, there's a balance. Thanks for those questions.
Jay Cortez wanted you to talk a bit about how you decided to start adding elements of performance to your work, especially as you were coming from a 2D, 3D kind of background of things, and then adding that part of the performance. Are you
Yeah.
also a
Yeah, so I just feel like it was a necessity. I was making things that opened out and changed and transformed, and no one could see that unless you showed it to them or instructed them on how to look at it. And I felt like in the book world, a lot of times you'll see one page of something, but you can't see the whole thing. And I wanted to give people the experience of the whole thing, how it looked like closed and how it looked like open. And so that's how the performance came about very early on there in the late 70s. It was just that act of opening and revealing and sharing with the audience in a physical way. And so I also, when I was in New York, I took a lot of movement classes, everything from yoga to clowning and improvisational movement and contact improvisation. And, you know, it wasn't always easy for me to kind of delve into that aspect of things. And a lot of it I enjoy, but it's also kind of a whole other area of study. And but recently here in Alaska, I started taking an improvisational movement class, and I'm really enjoying that. And just body movement on its own, not necessarily only manipulating objects, but moving the body in different ways. And I find that is really playful for me. That part I feel is just, you know, moving any way that you feel like moving. And I'm enjoying that, and thinking about it in relation to the objects as well. So thank you for those questions.
Someone
Oh.
wants to know if you made your own earrings.
I did make these earrings, but that's because I had these little like weird little flat cubes. So
Joel wants to know, and thinking about the movement and interaction with your work, do you consider the potential wear and tear on it, or is the eventual degradation an expected part of the life of the piece?
oh, I'm doing everything to preserve everything, you know. I feel like I consider potential wear and I try to make things as sturdy as possible so and hold up to whatever wear and tear. So if I know something's going to be used in performance, then I try to build it really, really well. And it doesn't mean it's not going to degrade because they do, but I also studied book conservation, so I know how to put a new hinge on something and, you know, touch it up with paint and that kind of thing. But then at the same time, there is with a lot of paper ephemeral things, unexpected kind of life of some things. But I do a lot of work to preserve the things that I make, including boxing, keeping them out of light and heat, making sure things fit well, so there isn't too much stress on a particular hinge or joint or something. So all those things.
Great. Well, I think we will call this a wrap. I'm gonna stop recording if I can figure out how.